Black Lives Matter is a political and social movement originating among African Americans, emphasizing basic human rights and racial equality for black people and campaigning against various forms of racism. In 2013, the movement began with the use of the hashtag Black Lives Matter on social media after the acquittal of George Zimmerman in the shooting of African American teen Trayvon Martin in February 2012. The following human rights activists were the ones who came up with the name of this movement, Black Lives Matter: Alicia Garza, Opal Tometi, and Patrisse Cullors. And it is also a complete misunderstanding of what the phrase Black Lives Matter means. The person on the receiving end interprets the phrase as Black Lives Matter more than any other lives. But the point of Black Lives Matter isn't to suggest that Black lives should be or are more important than any other lives. Instead, it's simply pointing out that Black people's lives are relatively undervalued in the US and are more likely to be ended by police. And the country needs to recognize that inequity to bring an end to it. To this end, a better way to understand Black Lives Matter is to look driving at its driving phrase as Black Lives Matter too. So all lives do matter obviously, but it's one subset of lives in particular that's currently undervalued in America and the rest of the world. So to end this, I would like to say that all lives do matter, but in this time, black lives are being undervalued more than any other lives, and we need everyone's help who is out of the circle of black lives to help us by using this hashtag or this movement or joining us in this movement to fight for black lives because they are very undervalued in America and the rest of the world.
So there is something very disappointing about the Black Lives Matter movement, and it's not like about the organizers and the people who mobilize everything. It's about us, the supporters of the movement, because if you look at the Black Lives Matter movement, all the similar movements, like the Civil Rights Movement, and if you look at the Black Panthers, it all become it instead of like becoming a revolution, which is what um, African Americans actually need for them to see change, it becomes a trend. And it's not for the organizers. The trend is not for the organizers, it's a trend for the supporters. And instead of supporting the movement because we believe in it and because we want to see actual change, I'm not saying we don't want to see actual change, I'm just saying we are not actually supporting the movement, we're just doing it for sure and to show our friends that we are woke, as people say. So, and the one example is that the black screens that were posted on Instagram supporting the Black Lives Matter movement during the protest for the murder of George Floyd. There were about 20 million screens on Instagram posted by everyone around the globe, I think. Um, and then if you look at the actual support, like petitions started online to bring about justice for George Floyd, they were less than 10 million. So there are about 12 million people who were posting black screens to show their friends that they're woke and they're so this which shows how it's just a trend, and most supporters are not actually doing it to support the movement, they're just doing it to show that they are not the problem, or just like because it's a trend, because it's trending, and after 1 week, as we've seen in the protests, they just forget about it and they move on. And then next time something is trending, they do the same thing, and then they do the same thing. And I think that's what has been holding back the movements since the 1960s.
Hi, my name is Faith, and I'm here to talk to you about people who have developed from being racist or have not even faced charges against being racist. So, to begin with, I'm going to talk about Donald Trump, the current president of America. So, he has done a lot of things, especially made a lot of racist remarks, especially during this George Floyd protests. So, he's countless times saying he's going to attack the protests, going to arrest them, and he has now recently said that he wants to resurrect the law and order playbook, which would like reinforce military force against protesters, and then he wanted to further like encourage police brutality against the black people. So he has no care for how this is going to affect these people who are protesting police brutality and racism. And then, of course, there's the comment he made against a presidential candidate called Elizabeth um, called Elizabeth Warren, and he referred to her as Pocahontas, and then he told her, "See you on the campaign trail, Liz." And in this case, the trail is a reference to the Trail of Tears, and it was a horrific act of ethnic cleansing in the 19th century in which Native Americans were forcibly relocated, causing thousands of deaths. So, and then there's also the very many other comments where he said that the Latinos and the Mexicans, they were the bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, and that they're rapists. And then of course he did not even make a remark or even condemn the people, the white supremacists who were the KK clan, who made protests in Charlottesville, Virginia, and they were condemning like the Jews and like the black people, telling them to go back home and that they have no right to stay in America and everything. And Trump, when asked to remark on this, he said that he said that there were many sides, both sides that were to blame, that there's no one true, proper wrong person in this case. But he never. And then the KK clan head David Duke said that he wants to fulfill the promises made to him by Donald Trump, so that they were acting in his name. It's sort of like he was okay with their actions. And then of course he's countless times referred to African countries as shitholes, and say that once the Nigerian immigrants come to their country, they will not want to go back. And then of course there's a group called there's a group called Angry Ardians, which is a band, and they've made very many songs called Still Just a Nigga, Race Mixing is Treason, Islam, Religion of Whores, Madman, Too White for You, and they've countless times said that they do not want people who are not like true Ardians to be, or even white people to be in their country. There's a gaming company called National Alliance, which made a game called Ethnic Cleansing, in which the characters shoot and hunt down other characters who are blacks, Hispanics, and Jews, and then they hunt them down and shoot them, and it's encouraging violence against these groups of people. So yes, this has been a presentation. Thank you.
So, has anyone ever from the GG community faced racism either in a foreign country? So now we're going to be listening to some audio recordings and video recordings from a few teachers from our school.
Hello everyone, my name is Ruth Nyabio, a proud black woman born and raised in Kenya. I have had the privilege of traveling to a few places in the world where people are predominantly white, and also by virtue of being a teacher, I've had the privilege of meeting and interacting with students, parents, and colleagues of different races. Though I have not been treated unfairly on the basis of my skin color, I know of people who have been victims of such a primitive act. I have read books, I have watched movies, and also recently I saw a clip doing rounds on social media platforms of a black man who was killed by a white cop while the whole world was watching. I feel that this is unfair. I feel that racism is outdated. It did not, should not, and will not have a place in the current society. Today, I will speak on behalf of such people, people who have been denied their rights of movement, their rights to speak, and even their rights to live, just because they reign from a different race. Nobody was born a racist. We learn this from the people who are born before us. As a teacher, I try to teach my students to appreciate and respect the racial, cultural, and even religious differences of other students that they interact with, or other people that they interact with. I find this important because it's such small acts that will change the world. So I urge everyone to come together and denounce and fight against racism. Thank you.
Quite a bit, especially to Europe, several times, and I would like to say that I haven't directly come in a situation where I've been racially discriminated upon or treated differently, but people close to me, my friends and people I know very well, have gone through different incidents where they've been discriminated upon, and it's saddening that such things still happen in this modern world. I believe that those people who are racist against other people, just because they look different, they have different culture, or they speak differently, is because they basically lack information, they lack knowledge about the other person who they in return treat differently. And for the person who is being discriminated against, is basically be able to know your worth, know your value, and know that you deserve to be where you are and that you have rights, and to stand up whenever such things occur. I think there are many channels for one to really voice their displeasure and not just keep quiet and let it happen. Because if you don't speak against it and stand up against it, it will keep happening. So the more people talk about it, and especially the young people, definitely we can change mindsets, and in the long run we realize that we are the same people, no matter how we look, or where we come from, or what color we have. So racism has no place in this modern society. Thank you very much.
Hello, have I experienced racism? Yes, I have. One time I was taking students for a school trip to Europe, and when we reached the first airport, we were on transit. All the adults were let go at the immigration except me. I was asked to step aside, and they started scrutinizing my documents, asking questions about whether I had enough money to spend, whether I was intending to go back to my country, etc. And as I stood there, it crossed my mind that these people had the right to actually deport me so that I don't continue with my trip. I was lucky that they eventually allowed me to proceed with my travel. But I asked myself, for an international airport that facilitates travels of people from different parts of the world, people of different races, why would you randomly pick the only black person, the only black adult person that is coming into your country, and automatically assume that this person's documents are not in order? Let's say no to racism. The world has become a global village, and we all need to treat each other with dignity and respect, whether you're black or white or green or purple. Let's say no to.
As of now, the current situation in Minneapolis is fairly calm. Most protests have stopped, and the majority of the National Guard have left. The only physical form of activism which is left are mostly made up of artists creating murals and petitions set up on the street. In addition, almost every home and business you see has some sort of banner or sign as their form of protest, with the majority saying things like Black Lives Matter or No Justice, No Peace. Other than that, there are still a number of businesses that are locked up with boarded walls, and though the mass of the protesters are long gone, they seem to not want to take down their boards, which could be due to COVID or the anticipation of future protests. The aftermath of the protests are still very shocking, with numerous buildings being looted, ransacked, and burnt. In areas where they did this, unfortunately, you happen to see and feel the damage everywhere, as it feels like you step into a whole different environment, whereas everywhere else it's more or less normal. The police presence has definitely also stepped down the past few weeks and seems to be a bit calmer than before the George Floyd incident, as you do see them less frequently. Other than that, life seems to be going back to normal with the exception.
Hi everyone, my name is Kirti and I'll be talking about how to raise awareness about racism and the discrimination against black people through books. I know that most people don't usually prefer to read in this digital age where we have digital content for either most or all types of consumers out there, but hey, I'll try. So the books, I will provide the link in the description below. So there are two major types in the list of books, and an example of the first type of book would be a book by Beverly Daniel Tatum called Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria, which is about black people and more specifically in this case, black kids facing racism on a daily basis. So the book took on the question of self-segregation and explored the realities of race in the public education system. It looked at how issues of race play out on a daily basis, like in something as simple as where you sit at your lunch. Everywhere we go, everywhere we look, and there will always be somebody different, and the issue is we tend to focus on the differences and not the similarities of other people, and that's where we go wrong. The book asks how people can talk more openly about racial issues, even if they're uncomfortable, and these are some of the things we ourselves will be able to answer after reading the book. The second type of book would be Ibram X. Kendi's How to Be a Racist, whose argument is brilliantly simple. I'd put it: an idea, an action or policy is either racist, that is, contributing to a history that regards and treats different races as inherently unequal, or it is anti-racist because it is trying to dismantle that history. There is nothing in between. There is no pure state of racism or anti-racism. People of all races and backgrounds can fall into either category depending on their ideas, actions, or the policies they support. So I would recommend you guys to check the link in the description below and find out more books which can help educate you about racism and discrimination. And thank you guys for listening to me.
Along with those, there are many TV series that are both entertaining and educational. There's Black AF, which features Kenya Barris and his family as they navigate through relationships, race, and culture, whilst grappling with their newfound success in this comedy series. Although it is lighthearted, every episode is literally titled Because of Slavery, so the link to race is evident. It came out this year in 2020, so there's only one season, which has 8 episodes, meaning that it is a quick watch. Next, we have Dear White People, which revolves around students of color navigating their way through the daily slights and slippery politics of life at an Ivy League college that is not nearly as post-racial as it thinks. In a world where us as students go to schools that claim to be anti-racism, yet don't match what they're saying with what they're doing, Dear White People is definitely one to watch. Another one that has to be on this list is When They See Us, which is about the infamous Central Park jogger case where 5 teens from Harlem, Kevin Richardson, Antron McCray, Raymond Santana, Yusuf Salam, and Corey Wise were wrongfully convicted after they gave a police-coerced confession for a crime that they did not commit. There are also other true crime docuseries such as The Innocence Files, which exposes wrongful convictions and the injustice inflicted upon a number of victims. Time, the Kalief Browder story, which is about a teenager wrongfully charged with theft and sent to New York's notorious jail, Rikers Island, for 1,000 days. Rikers Island is infamous for housing high-profile inmates such as Tupac, but is also infamous for its reputation of violence, brutality, and inhumanity. Last but not least, Who Killed Malcolm X, which gives an insight into Malcolm X, his beliefs, and his mysterious death. This documentary was so powerful that now officials are looking to reopen his case, so it is definitely worth investing your time in.
One way to raise awareness is to educate yourself and others on the issue. This can be done by watching documentaries. The following documentaries are just a few of the documentaries you can watch to educate yourself and others on the issue of racism in America. The first documentary is I Am Not Your Negro. I Am Not Your Negro is James Baldwin's personal account of the civil rights movement and racial inequality in America. The second documentary is 3.5 minutes, 10 bullets. This explores the murder of an unarmed 17-year-old black teenager by the name of Jordan Davis. The third documentary is 13th. 13th explores the history of racial inequality in the United States and focuses on the fact that the nation's prisons are disproportionately filled with African Americans. Some other documentaries to watch include Stay Woke, the Black Lives Matter movement, Who Streets, and multiple other documentaries. Documentaries are an easy way to educate yourself and others on the issue and can be shared to multiple people. They give you an insight on the issue and help you better understand it.
Okay, thank you. My name is Enoch, and again, I'm going to be talking about how to raise awareness, basically ways to raise awareness when it comes to discrimination of Black people. And so I wanted to actually talk about the category of movies, because I'm sure everybody watches movies, everybody watches this video, probably loves watching movies, but then do we really learn from the movies we watch? Do we really understand? So I wanted to share a few movies that really show like the struggle of a Black man, a Black woman, a Black family in not only the US but then worldwide, from even the times of slavery up to modern day. So I want to start with the movie 12 Years a Slave. I'm sure this is a very interesting movie, and this is a movie a lot of people have watched. Basically it shows the life of a slave that came from Africa and all that. So I think this movie really educates you about how Black people came to be in the US and all around the world, and how they were taken as slaves and how they were treated and all these different things. So I think that's a good movie to like start with, even though it's a bit graphic and that, then it's good. And then I wanted to talk about a few other movies, such as Boys in the Hood, which is basically a movie about a group of friends that and it shows like the struggle they go through living in Los Angeles and all the racial discrimination and the challenges they face only because of the color of their skin, but not the capacity of like their brain or like their character or the different things. But everything was judged on the color of their skin, and due to this they face different struggles, as you can watch. Thirdly, I wanted to share with all of you a movie known as Straight Outta Compton, which I'm sure many of you have already watched, which is basically this time it focuses more on like the journey in the music industry for Black people in America during the 90s, 80s, and it shows the journey of very famous artists in the 90s, such as Eazy-E, Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, and all these different people as they collaborated to start a label known as NWA. So basically it shows their challenges and how they were racially discriminated against and how hard it was for them to come up in the music industry only because of the color of their skin, but not because of the amount of talent they had. So I think this is a great movie to show you like the struggles of like everyday life, like someone trying to make it in a system that is designed to oppress them. And then lastly, I think I wanted to share a movie I'm sure many of us have watched, which is known as The Hate U Give. I'm sure many people have watched this movie, and basically this time it talks about the things we've seen happening in America, police brutality, killings by the police killing innocent Black men. So basically shows the journey of a girl who witnessed the murder of an innocent Black man who was just reaching for his comb, and then the officer assumed he was reaching for his gun, and then he was killed. And then basically shows the type of things that this could result in, such as riots and protests and all these different things, and the fear that the police really instills into the Black community. So I think these 4 movies are very important movies that talk about like the struggle of a normal Black person in the United States or even all over the world. Even though most of these movies were set in the United States, but I think, as we all know, the United States has the most record for systematic oppression. So thank you, and I hope that you all took something from this, and that as you watch movies and as you read books and you watch series and all these different things, you may actually look for something to actually educate you and actually teach you more about the world that we live in today. Thank you.